Welcome to another episode of Mike Reads. Tonight we'll be continuing our series on Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations with our second read in Book 4, Chapter 3, Part 1, Chapter 3, entitled Of the Extraordinary Restraints Upon the Importation of Goods of Almost All Kinds from Those Countries with Which the Balance is Supposed to be Disadvantageous. Not sure exactly where we left off, so I apologize if I wound up backtracking a little bit. So without further ado. Secondly, in some countries, the expensive coinage is defrayed by the government. In others, it is defrayed by the private people who carry their bullion to the mint, and the government even derives some revenue from the coinage. In England, it is defrayed by the government, and if you carry a pound weight of standard silver to the mint, you get back 62 shillings, containing a pound weight of the like standard silver. In France, a duty of 8% is deducted for the coinage, which not only defrays the expense of it, but affords a small revenue to the government. In England, as the coinage costs nothing, the current coin can never be much more valuable than the quantity of bullion which it actually contains. In France, the workmanship, as you pay for it, adds to the value in the same manner as to that of wrought plate. A sum of French money, therefore, containing a certain weight of pure silver, is more valuable than the sum of English money containing an equal weight of pure silver, and must require more bullion or other commodities to purchase it. Though the current coin of the two countries, therefore, were equally near the standards of their respective mints, a sum of English money could not well purchase a sum of French money containing an equal number of ounces of pure silver, nor consequently a bill upon France for such a sum. If for such a bill no more additional money was paid than what was sufficient to compensate the expense of the French coinage, the real exchange might be at par between the two countries. Their debts and credits might mutually compensate one another, while the computed exchange was considerably in favor of France. If less than this was paid, the real exchange might be in favor of England, while the computed was in favor of France. Thirdly, and lastly, in some places, as at Amsterdam, Hamburg, Venice, etc., foreign bills of exchange are paid in what they call bank money, while in others, as at London, Lisbon, Antwerp, Leghorn, etc., they are paid in the common currency of the country. What is called bank money is always of more value than the same nominal sum of common currency. 1,000 guilders in the Bank of Amsterdam, for example, are of more value than 1,000 guilders of Amsterdam currency. The difference between them is called the agio of the bank, which, at Amsterdam, is generally about 5%. Supposing the current money of two countries equally near to the standard of their respective mints, and that the one pays foreign bills in this common currency, while the other pays them in bank money, it is evident that the computed exchange may be in favor of that which pays in bank money, though the real exchange should be in favor of that which pays in current money, for the same reason that the computed exchange may be in favor of that which pays in better money, or in money nearer to its own standard, though the real exchange should be in favor of that which pays in worse. The computed exchange, before the late reformation of the gold coin, was generally against London with Amsterdam, Hamburg, Venice, and I believe with all other places which pay in what is called bank money. It will by no means follow, however, that the real exchange was against it. Since the reformation of the gold coin, it has been in favor of London even with those places. The computed exchange has generally been in favor of London with Lisbon, Antwerp, Leghorn, and, if you accept France, I believe, with most other parts of Europe that pay in common currency. And it is not improbable that the real exchange was so too. Digression concerning banks of deposit, particularly concerning that of Amsterdam. The currency of a great state, such as France or England, generally consists almost entirely of its own coin. Should this currency, therefore, be at any time worn, clipped, or otherwise degraded below its standard value, the state, by a reformation of its coin, can effectually re-establish its currency. But the currency of a small state, such as Genoa or Hamburg, can seldom consist altogether in its own coin, but must be made up in a great measure of the coins of all the neighboring states with which its inhabitants have a continual intercourse. Such a state, therefore, by reforming its coin, will not always be able to reform its currency. If foreign bills of exchange are paid in this currency, the uncertain value of any sum of what is in its own nature so uncertain must render the exchange always very much against such a state, its currency being, in all foreign states, necessarily valued even below what it is worth. In order to remedy the inconvenience to which this disadvantageous exchange must have subjected their merchants, such small states, when they began to attend to the interest of trade, have frequently enacted that foreign bills of exchange of a certain value should be paid not in common currency, but by an order upon or by a transfer in the banks of a certain bank established upon the credit and under the protection of the state, this bank being always obliged to pay in good and true money, exactly according to the standard of the state. The banks of Venice, Genoa, Amsterdam, Hamburg, and Nuremberg seem to have been all originally established with this view, though some of them may have afterwards been made subservient to other purposes. The money of such banks being better than the common currency of the country necessarily bore an agio, which was greater or smaller according to the currency was supposed to be more or less degraded below the standard of this state. The agio of the Bank of Hamburg, for example, which is said to be commonly about 14%, is the supposed difference between the good standard money of the state and the clipped, worn, and diminished currency poured into it from all other neighboring states. Before 1609, the great quantity of clipped and worn foreign coin, which the extensive trade of Amsterdam brought from all parts of Europe, reduced the value of its currency about 9% below that of good money fresh from the mint. Such money no sooner appeared than it was melted down or carried away, as it always is in such circumstances. The merchants, with plenty of currency, could not always find a sufficient quantity of good money to pay their bills of exchange, and the value of those bills, in spite of several regulations which were made to prevent it, became in a great measure uncertain. In order to remedy these inconveniencies, a bank was established in 1609 under the guarantee of the city. This bank received both foreign coin and the light and worn coin of the country at its real intrinsic value in the good standard of money of the country, deducting only so much as was necessary for defraying the expense of coinage and the other necessary expense of management. For the value which remained, after this small deduction was made, it gave a credit in its books. The credit was called bank money, which, as it represented money exactly according to the standard of the mint, was always of the same real value and intrinsically worth more than current money. It was at the same time enacted that all bills drawn upon or negotiated at Amsterdam of the value of 600 guilders and upwards should be paid in bank money, which at once took away all uncertainty in the value of those bills. Every merchant, in consequence of this regulation, was obliged to keep an exchange with the bank in order to pay his foreign bills of exchange, which necessarily occasioned a certain demand for bank money. Bank money, over and above both its intrinsic superiority to currency and the additional value which this demand necessarily gives it, has likewise some other advantages. It is secure from fire, robbery, or other accidents. The city of Amsterdam is bound for it. It can be paid away by a simple transfer without the trouble of counting or the risk of transporting it from one place to another. In consequence of those different advantages, it seems from the beginning to have borne an agio, and it is generally believed that all the money originally deposited in a bank was allowed to remain there, nobody caring to demand payment of a debt which he could sell for a premium in the market. By demanding payment of the bank, the owner of a bank credit would lose this premium. As a shilling fresh from the mint will buy no more goods in the market than one of our common worn shillings, so the good and true money which might be brought from the coffers of the bank into those of a private person, being mixed and confounded with the common currency of the country, would be of no more value than that currency from which it could no longer be readily distinguished. While it remained in the coffers of the bank, its superiority was known and ascertained. When it had come into those of a private person, its superiority could not well be ascertained without more trouble than perhaps the difference was worth. By being brought from the coffers of the bank, besides, it lost all other advantages of bank money: its security, its ease and safe transferability, its use in paying foreign bills of exchange. Over and above all this, it could not be brought from those coffers, as it will appear by and by, without previously paying for the upkeep. Those deposits of coin, or those deposits which the bank was bound to restore in coin, constituted the original capital of the bank, or the whole value of what was represented by what is called bank money. At present, they are supposed to constitute but a very small part of it. In order to facilitate the trade in bullion, the bank has been for these many years in the practice of giving credit in its books upon deposits of gold and silver bullion. This credit is generally about 5% below price of such bullion. The bank grants at the same time what is called a recipice or a receipt, entitling the person who makes the deposit or the bearer to take out the bullion again at any time within 6 months, upon retransferring to the bank a quantity of bank money equal to that for which the credit had been given in its books when the deposit was made, and upon paying 1/4% for keeping if the deposit was in silver, and 1/2% if it was in gold, but at the same time declaring that in default of such payment, and upon the expiration of this term, the deposit should belong to the bank at the price at which it had been received, or for which credit had been given in the transfer books. What is thus paid for the keeping of the deposit may be considered as a sort of warehouse rent, and why this warehouse rent should be so much dearer for gold than for silver, several different reasons have been assigned. The fineness of gold, it has been said, is more difficult to be ascertained than that of silver. Frauds are more easily practiced, and occasion a greater loss in the more precious metal. Silver, besides, being the standard metal, the state, it has been said, wishes to encourage more the making of deposits of silver than those of gold. Deposits of bullion are most commonly made when the price is somewhat lower than ordinary, and they are taken out again when it happens to rise. In Holland, the market price of bullion is generally above the mint price, for the same reason that it was so in England before the late reformation of the gold coin. The difference is said to be commonly from about 6 to 16 stivers upon the mark, or 8 ounces of silver of 11 parts fine and 1 part alloy. The bank price, or the credit which the bank gives for deposits of such silver, when made in foreign coin, of which the fineness is well known and ascertained, such as Mexican dollars, is 22 guilders the mark. The mint price is about 23 guilders, and the market price is from 23 guilders 6 to 23 guilders 16 stivers, or from 2 to 3% above the mint price. The proportions between the bank price, the mint price, and the market price of gold bullion are nearly the same. A person can generally sell his receipt for the difference between the mint price of bullion and the market price. A receipt for bullion is almost always worth something, and it very seldom happens, therefore, that anybody suffers his receipt to expire, or allows his bullion to fall to the bank at the price at which it had been received, either by not taking it out before the end of the 6 months, or by neglecting to pay the 1/4 or 1/2% in order to obtain a new receipt for another 6 months. This, however, though it happens seldom, is said to happen sometimes, and more frequently with regard to gold than with regard to silver, on account of the higher warehouse rent which is paid for the keeping of the more precious metal. The person who, by making a deposit of bullion, obtains a bank credit and a receipt, pays his bills of exchange as they become due with his bank credit, and either sells or keeps his receipt according as he judges that the price of bullion is likely to rise or fall. The receipt and the bank credit seldom keep long together, and there's no occasion that they should. The person who has a receipt and who wants to take out bullion finds always plenty of bank credits or bank money to buy at the ordinary price, and the person who has bank money and wants to take out bullion finds receipts always in equal abundance. All right, I'm actually going to call it there for to create a little. We're a little bit on the short side today, but that we should be able to finish up this section of this chapter in the next read. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit short read next time around. However, in order for us to finish the rest of this section in one read tonight, I'm actually going to run out of time. So we'll call it quits there. We will see in the next read, we should be able to finish off part 1 of Book 4, Chapter 3, entitled Of the Extraordinary Restraints upon the Importation of Goods of Almost All Kinds from those countries with which the balance is supposed to be disadvantageous. So until then, this has been Mike, signing off.